I guess this is becoming a regular thing. I go to political science class and then have a commentary afterwards. What we did today is basically the battle between states' rights and federal rights. Should it be the central government that has control of an issue, or should it be the states? And I think in most cases it should be the states, and I think in some certain cases it should be the federal government. And I think that really works itself out really well just in a strict constitutionalism. The tiered the tiered framework in which certain issues are 100% the states and certain issues are 100% the federal government. I don't think that the federal government should be able to breach the wall that separates the division of powers between the two. And really, my main takeaway from this class is that my viewpoints are not rare viewpoints. There are many, many people who are libertarians, strict constitutionalists who have the exact same beliefs as the founders of the United States in 1776 and 1800. We have the same viewpoint. We're not somehow different. We didn't change our views. It's kind of a myth. It's a myth that the Americans have changed their viewpoint in the last 200 years. We still think the same things. We still want the same stuff out of our government. And yet our government has changed. It has changed in nature to be more authoritarian and more centralized, and it's not something that we want. We're not happy about that. Wanting a small government is not an antiquated notion. Many, many people still want it. And I think it's something that we're going to return to because I'm seeing many, many people who want this. And I think we need to reform. We need to reform, and we need to go back to the good way that we used to have things. And it's not like we're changing the Constitution. We're just going back to obeying the Constitution. We've had 200 years where we've really been disobeying the Constitution. We should just go back to obeying the law. We just need to get back to doing what the paper already says we're supposed to do. This is our social agreement that our social contract. We agreed that we're going to follow the Constitution as a nation. That's what we should do. Yeah, so I think in international issues such as war, international commerce, trade, immigration, stuff like that, things that don't have any center of location, such as internet stuff and things like that, then I think that the federal government should be in charge of it. And if it has a center of location where the activity is taking place, if it has if it's anything that's not specifically given to the federal government, then I think there's no reason why the federal government can be able to justify it. I think that it's a state's issue. Unless the lawsuit goes to the Supreme Court, in which case, yes, then the federal government would get involved. Because if you bring your case, your lawsuit case to your court case to the Supreme Court, then it does become a federal issue. I think it's fine that there are federal laws. I just think that many of those laws are overstepping their bounds and should be reciprocated in the states and then processed in the states. It's entirely possible that there are laws that are outdated and need to be legislated away. We voted on a law a long time ago. There's some that we need to vote them out. Get rid of we need to clear out old stuff that doesn't apply anymore. I think what's something that always applies and never stops applying is the Constitution. It's timeless. So loud here. I think the Constitution is timeless, but I think that different legislations about different issues are not timeless. We tried prohibition, it didn't work. We had certain laws. Let me give you an example from another country. In Canada, the laws regarding marriage and the laws regarding, what husbands and wives are supposed to look like and how they're supposed to work. And, there's really crazy laws, outdated, antiquated laws. for example, there's one law in Canada where if a wife overspends too much money, then the husband has to come down and pay for it out of his pocket, you know. So there's like almost Victorian sort of stuff, like the man has to come in and handle this, and then they have to hold him accountable for what the wife does, and it's really, really weird stuff. I was watching a feminist speaker talking about, you know, how if you really love a man, you would never marry him in Canada because you're subjecting him to a lot of responsibility and punishments in case you ever make any mistakes. It all falls on him, not on you, which is really weird. But in the case of America, I believe there are legislations that the people just don't agree with anymore. And if that's the case, then we should have a regular review where we bring up old stuff that we don't care about anymore and say, do we really need this law on the books? Let's vote it out. That should be something that's happening. It's something that should happen in the state legislatures and in the national legislatures. You know, I think really we need term limits. We need term limits for senators and legislators such as senators, because really they're lazy. They're lazy. They don't spend their time primarily in their own hometown where they live. They spend most of it at the Capitol buildings, and they're not living inside their own districts where they represent. They represent one district, but they live in another. And then for the most part, they're not even spending their time there. They're spending it in the Capitol. And so they never have any connection to what they have to live with. They don't do the activities that we do. They don't have the lifestyle that we do. They're not involved. And they're hanging out there for decades and decades. You know, at least, 5 years being a politician takes you away from everything else. All the daily life that affects, what kind of laws we have to live under. And of course, for whatever reason, we decided here's an outdated legislation. This is an outdated legislation that needs to go. So I have an example now for the United States. Why are senators and other elected politicians immune from petty crimes such as theft? Why are senators and legislators allowed to do shoplifting? Why are senators and legislators allowed to do shoplifting and get away with it? That's criminal. If you commit shoplifting and you're a senator, you shouldn't be a senator anymore. If you're a representative and you do shoplifting, you shouldn't be a representative anymore. It's out of this outdated notion that you have to be able to get there on time, and if you had committed shoplifting, then you wouldn't be able to get to your assembly meeting on time, and so you'd be late, and so it wouldn't allow the government to proceed. Your lack of preparation is not our cause for concern. If you're going to be lazy and can't get to work on time, you should be in the job. If you're a senator and you're being late all the time, and you're cutting it close, and the reason you cut it so close and you missed work is because you were shoplifting, you shouldn't be in the Senate or the House of Representatives, either in the state or the federal level. So there should not be so-called diplomatic immunity for senators and legislators, whether you're a state or a federal one. So that's an outdated law, and I think we should legislate that away. And I think what we should legislate in is term limits so that senators and legislators are motivated. They have to keep doing stuff. They have to be active. They have to find something to do. Make busy the idle hands. Make busy the lazy hands. If your hands have nothing to do, then you decay. Use it or lose it. If you don't get active, then you basically start wearing away. That's sort of like exercise. But for the state, for the federal government, and for the individual who works in it. And I think all these states' rights issues would really flourish if the legislators would just get active and show that you already have a law. In order to defeat an idea, you have to propose an alternative. You can't just attack the bad idea. You have to propose an alternative to replace it. If the states would just make laws, then the federal government would be hard-pressed to replace those laws that already exist because the situation is already handled. And the states need to sue. They need to sue, and they need to keep suing until they win to get their power back. Yeah.